What's up, guys? It's Phil here. Now, every story has a beginning, every story will someday have an end. What keeps these two pieces tied together is the middle, the body of the story, the in-between, betwixt, if you will. And that's what we're here to talk about today with my part 2 of my Borderlands 4 review, a squeakquel of sorts, if you will. This part of the review is going to cover the Carcadia Burn and Terminus Range sections of the game. The first part will be Carcadia Burn and the Callus section of the game, and the second part will be Terminus Range and Vile Lictor. Spoilers are ahead. Now, getting into Carcadia Burn, it reminds me a lot of Pandora in a lot of ways. It's mostly bandits, the Rippers, and there's lots of desert, and it's mostly a wasteland full of traces of civilization, like random buildings and remnants of where there used to be settlements. And also Zane is there. Love Zane. I'm glad they brought him back, because after the reception to the story of Borderlands 3, I was a little bit worried that they'd either kill him of old age, or they would kill all of the Borderlands 3 Vault Hunters in a plane crash. Zane was my favorite Vault Hunter in 3, I picked him before the Seeing Dead class mod came out in the Moxie's Jackpot DLC. I'm very proud of that fact, so it's nice to see him in a spot that's not just making grunting noises while taking damage over time from Borderlands 3 elemental damage puddles. Anyways, Zane is our liaison to this side of the world, and he serves a similar role to Maya in Borderlands 3, that being a guide and an on-the-field supporter. He uses his Sentinel and Digiclone when he's on the field, and that proves that he's watched many Killer 6 build guides, and he understands his audience. Although I would argue with Zane that his shoulder cannon has a better synergy with the Seeing Dead class mod, although it's up to him what he wants to use. Zane has some sort of no-strings relationship with Levane, who is the current leader of the Electi, the native people of Carcadia Burn. Their banter is greatly appreciated, especially with Zane's roguish charm and Levane being as smart and powerful as she is, being the leader of the Electi and all. We also meet Quent, an unlikely frontline of the Electi forces who honestly seems scared of combat. There's an ongoing gag around the story wherever Zane and Quent both are, where Zane forgets Quent's name, calling him Quell, Quill, Quellish, all sorts of things. It plays in later, keep that in mind. Moxie also makes her return, although she is much more low-key than Zane. She just runs a bar that caters to Rippers and Electi alike, as long as everyone plays nice, a rule which is enforced by Zane. One thing to note is the disconnect from the other sides of the world during this story. There's one minor mention from your character, at least if you play Rafa, of being part of the Outbounders. I don't believe there's a mention of Rush or Zadra, and you really don't hear about Terminus Range out here at all. It speaks to the scope of the world, where you're so disconnected from another part of the world that you never hear about it. But part of this also is an issue, because it would be nice to get an echo during a mission, talking about the Timekeeper, or talking about Rush or Zadra. We actually do get echoes from the Timekeeper talking about Callus and this part of the world, and how he doesn't have to clean up her mess since we're doing it for him. But we hear nothing from our allies. To be fair, I didn't do any side quests while I was here, as I'm saving them for after the main story, so I have something to level up from to level 50. Along with that, the rewards scale to your level, and some of them are actually failable, meaning that you miss out on achievements without doing a repeat playthrough, so I've elected to save mine for using guides. Now, back to the story, we help Zane and his pet Thresher, Sophia, stop the siege of the Electi city Carcadia. Then Sophia is just unceremoniously killed by the Rippers. This is played to be highly emotional and stinging for Zane, but we, the player, have barely met this Thresher. We had to clear enemies just for her to be able to do anything, like destroying the catapults, and they hadn't really affected us as of yet. If we'd seen Carcadia under siege, maybe fought alongside Sophia more, or even heard more stories from Zane about her to build her up, maybe I would have felt differently, but honestly I didn't really care that she died. Zane definitely did though, so after we stop the siege, the next mission is trying to hunt him down. He uses Quent to distract some enemies and heads for the Ripper Queen's supposed lair. Now, during this mission you help Quent, then tell him to head back to the Electi. Instead, Levane lets you know that he never made it back, and you assume he went to help Zane, but Zane hasn't seen him either. Now, this part of the story definitely reminded me of Borderlands 3 in a lot of ways. It's probably the most dread-filled part of the game, where you can't reach Zero on the Echo, and Reese is talking all the ways that Zero would never betray him and how dedicated he is. I had a similar feeling here to that, where I felt like Quent was going to betray us. Now, this really is the only part of the game where Zane is actually referring to Quent by name. Quent, instead of Quill or Quell or whatever else he came up with. I'm not sure if I'm the only one who felt this way, as I avoided story spoilers like the plague, But this part really scared me that he was going to turn out to be a secret Ripper or an agent of the Timekeeper. Instead, we find out that the Rippers were doing mass rippings, where they were tearing out people's bolts and letting those who survived the process become Rippers. Quent is next in line to be ripped, and we fight Driller Hole to stop the process. There is a timer after Driller Hole is defeated in order for us to save Quent, and I do wonder what would happen if we didn't save Quent here, but I was too scared to find out for myself. If anyone knows, let me know down in the comments. I don't mind a spoiler. We save Quent and we go to stop Callus. She's launching grappling hooks at Elpis and attempting to reach it for some reason.
We are going to steal the moon!
I think the Rippers are moon crazy or something. A lot of them talk about the moon.
Think me a fanatic, a mad woman. He does too. I was like you once, blind, but the flames in the sky burned the call from my eyes. I saw it, lit by wings of fire, a vision of power, destined for me alone. The veil above us shattered, and with it went the Timekeeper's stranglehold. My Rippers are the ones who see what I see. We built all this to do the unthinkable. Leave Kairos and take the stars for ourselves. For Elpis is my fated destination. The site of one final death. There, I will be reborn again. Free of flesh and blood. And I will dawn as the divine.
For someone with such a lofty goal, she went down quicker than Moxie on Mordecai after he won the Underdome and got some Thunderdome. Seriously, I think the fight took about 3 minutes total. Not surprising for a Borderlands story fight, especially given my selectiveness and luck with gear, and I'm glad we're avoiding invulnerability phases now for the most part. If anything, I was pleasantly surprised. Ultimately, I liked this section of the game. I'll talk about the vaults more after I talk about Terminus Range, but I was a little bit disappointed by the vault here. On to the next area, the aforementioned Terminus Range. It's a snowy, mountainous area where the Augurs live. The Augurs are a closed-off and ritualistic people who name themselves after their defining characteristic, like Vile Lictor, the villain here, or Defiant Calder, the exile-turned-freedom fighter who hopes to spur the congregation of Augurs into rebellion against Vile Lictor and to stop the Timekeeper's mining operations that keep Vile Lictor experimenting. See, Vile Lictor is a scientist, and his current fixation is the power of sirens, specifically their use of the Phase, a seemingly alternate dimension that those blessed by Iridium use for their power. Lilith was able to use it to move faster with Phase Walk, Maya and now Ava use it to hold enemies and drain them with Phase Lock, Amara uses it for Phase Grasp and uses her multiple hands for a myriad of combat abilities, Tannis uses the Phase for Phase Shift, the technological control of devices, and Vex uses the Phase for some sort of Phase Summon. I don't know what her exact name of her ability is, as the Phase gives her supernatural powers. Vile Lictor is mining Ordinite and Iridium from Elpis in order to study it and how it affects those that are influenced by the Phase. The missions seemed less important here and more focused on the overall story implications of the Sirens, the Phase, and Vile Lictor's attempt to ascend to God, because immortality just wasn't enough. We also speak to a mysterious entity who tells us to seek out a siren, and we think it may be Lilith speaking to us.
You, Vault Hunter, great danger.
Who's there?
Find the siren. Iridium is the key.
Now, the returning character, like Zane, of this section is Amara, the Wildcat or the Tiger of Partali, and she returns with an actual Wildcat or Mangler of some sort known as Hermes. She's been lying in wait on Kairos after Sanctuary 3 apparently crashed into Kairos, which is something I completely missed if it was mentioned earlier in the story. I was taking in as much as I could, but damn, I might have missed some parts. You can actually walk around Sanctuary 3 a little at her hideout, and it's very nostalgic. Amara helps us with breaking into a few facilities, including one part where she powers up and smashes through a wall, then proceeds to do the same to another wall. Only the door on the wall opens and she just eviscerates someone. It's not acknowledged. What did Gearbox mean by this? Along the way, Vialictor taunts us with the news of his experiments, including adding Ordinite crystals to certain enemies to make them invulnerable, unless the crystals are dealt damage to make them come off of the enemies so that they become killable. We also deal with the Augur Council, and one of them is actually murdered by Vialictor in front of us, leading to the Augurs supporting us and taking him out. We also run into what appears to be another siren who could phase walk, and we think it to be Lilith. However, this person is masked and obscured, and they run away from us. After this, Amara helps us break into Vialictor's main facility, including a fun part where we hop through various phase rifts that have opened that lead us to slightly different environments. What would have been really funny is if we went all over the map, although I understand the limitations of doing something like this. Instead, we teleport through various facilities and fight random enemies. Now, to note, at this point I was around level 33, and the enemies I was fighting was level 33 to level 35. What stuck out to me here was that I changed my Rafa build. I actually was using the Peacebreaker cannons in the previous parts of the video, including Carcadia Burn, and also in my previous video in the Fade Fields. However, I switched to a Arc Blades build because they not only buffed them last week, but also I wanted to try out the different skill trees. I was having a fun time, I was surviving, and I was mobbing with no issue. However, at the entrance to Vialictor's facility, the enemy levels randomly jumped to 37 or so, for no reason, and I died many times trying just to get into the facility. What's even weirder is that once I got into the facility, the enemies were all back to level 33 to 35. I'm not sure why there was a random difficulty spike, but we ball, I guess. I also experienced a few small glitches, one where I got stuck in a wall. I was able to get out, thankfully, but there was one where an enemy got stuck in a wall and I had to close and reopen my game to get them to spawn properly. There is also a part where you're fighting alongside a machination of Defiant Calders, and its name is Bruce. And for some reason, Defiant Calder says that Bruce is loose.
Bruce is loose!
And I get it. Borderlands has some inexplicable pop culture references, like Rick and Morty, Elon Musk, One Punch Man, Baby No Money, just to name a few. But an O.J. Simpson reference really threw me for a loop, because there not only implies that the Augurs have some form of football, but they also had some form of O.J. Simpson, some form of his trial, and some form of the pop culture that deviated from that. Like, there's no fucking way he made that reference. What a world. Anyways, we fight through Vialictor's facility and he attempts to kill Mara. He whiffs, and then he cuts her arm off and steals it. What a sick fuck. We then fight him, and I won't lie, it took me 4 tries to kill him. There aren't many mob enemies to get a second wind from. He's really hard with an arc blade setup. I probably should have done the Apophis Lance or switched back to the Peacebreakers, but I wasn't aware of what kind of boss fight it would be, and I'm pretty stubborn. I finally killed him, and then the so-called siren that we saw before is in front of us, and they remove their mask. It's not a siren, it's RJ. And he reveals he survived the beginning of the game, and because he's a survivor, he was chosen by the Timekeeper in order to be experimented on by Vialictor and turned into some kind of partial phase being, explaining his phase walk and abilities. He seems to have some sort of grudge against Lilith and warns us to essentially stay out of his way, and give up on the Vault Hunter thing. It's weird. Now, this wraps up the story section of the video, but stick around if you want to hear me talk about the vaults. Moving on to the aforementioned vaults, they are just as bad as before, if not worse, due to a huge story reveal. When I entered the second vault in the Carcadia Burn area, the Watcher mentioned something about there being a bigger bad than the Timekeeper, something worse. And the Watcher also mentions being here before the Timekeeper and that they're going to be here after him. Why was it necessary to say that there will be some kind of bigger bad or worse problem in the future? What was the point of this? It's so strange. Way to make your main villain feel useful, guys. Now, I won't lie, the Timekeeper is still a dick, but so far he hasn't done much to actually earn that role outside of tough talk and killing some nameless NPCs. He didn't even actually kill RJ. He didn't kill Sophia, it was a random NPC. Unless he does something a lot more drastic, I can't see myself wanting his downfall nearly as much as I wanted the Vault in Borderlands 1 to kill Jack in Borderlands 2, or the Calypsos to shut the fuck up in Borderlands 3. The vaults themselves were fine. They were decent little gauntlets to run through, and I am warming up to the vault pack upgrades, although I do wish the main story bosses like Idolater Saul, Callus, and Vialictor had given us these instead of the vaults. And again, I wish the vaults had some sort of guaranteed legendary or unique item to re-roll for, but I'll take what we have now. And in regards to loot, I definitely could have done these vaults at a higher level, but guaranteed drops would still be nice. All in all, the second of 3 parts to the Borderlands 4 playthrough was nice, and I'm excited to see what's next. The story is heating up, and I hope the villain does some truly reprehensible shit to get me to want to cause his downfall. And the gameplay is just as spicy as ever. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for part 3, and I will see you guys in the next one.